Sometimes buying the cheaper option of something will cost you more money in the long run. Sit tight. Hey, what's going on? It's Matt. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to make a relatively short video about something that's kind of been going on in my head and something that comes up a lot, I think, on YouTube channels that are geared towards it, and Facebook posts. There's a lot of Facebook posts about what's the best or cheapest entry-level gear to kind of get me into a sport or an activity, whether it be hiking, whether it be fishing, whether it be photography, and that's kind of directed specifically at me right now. And this kind of thought kind of came into my head recently when I got something from one of my sponsors. I wouldn't call him a sponsor, I should back that up. I'm a brand ambassador for Nebo flashlights, and I have been for quite some time. In fact, if you've been watching this channel long enough, you know I've done quite a couple of reviews on them, but every month they send me a flashlight, and usually they're great flashlights, and usually they're rechargeable, and usually they're the newer flashlights. But this month I got this one, and this is the Nebo Redline Micro or Mini. I forgot what they called it. It's, you know, it turns red and there's the red line. This is an older flashlight. It's been in their arsenal for probably about 4 years. There's been tons of reviews on it. 4 years ago. It's cost effective. It comes in around 15 bucks. But then I was kind of like, why are you sending me this? Like, this is crap. Like, I don't want this one. This doesn't serve my purpose. Because I happen to like everything that's rechargeable. So enter this one right here, which is the Nebo Torchy. This is rechargeable. This came out about a year ago. There's a magnetic base. This one has that too. This goes to 1,000 lumens, blah, 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 blah. These are both great EDC flashlights. They're both about 2.5 inches big. And this one was meant to replace this one. So why did Nebo send me this one? Well, kind of got me started on this whole crazy thought process. And if you've watched this channel long enough, you know that I'm all over the place. So when it comes to my thought process, but I ended up going on Amazon and buying the Torchy, the more expensive one. And I was kind of sitting there, I'm like, you know what? Like, if I were to purchase this flashlight, which is the original flashlight, right? This is the Redline Micro, which runs off of a CR123A battery, a battery that looks like this. It's not like your regular AAA or anything like that. It would end up costing me probably about $100 to run for the whole year if I used it on a daily basis. And the reason why is because those batteries are about $11 a pop, and they don't last that long because this is a high lumen flashlight. It's in a small package. It burns through batteries very, very quickly, as does this one. However, this one is rechargeable. So kind of going back to the initial premise of this video is this cost $15 initially. This cost $30. It's double the cost. Okay, not a lot of difference in money when you're at that low of a number. But at the end of the day, this will cost me $30 to run probably for the next 7 years. And we'll probably be in the hundreds to operate this flashlight. So if I was purchasing the cheaper model, it actually becomes more expensive in the long run. Where else do we do this? Where else do we do this as kayak fishermen? Where else do we do this as hikers and backpackers? So I really started thinking about the mistakes that I've made. And this is not a jab at the channels on YouTube that kind of focus on the less expensive gear. I get that. I get what you're trying to do. Hey, this is the cheapest sleeping pad that can get you into backpacking and hiking because we just want you to get out there. But what ends up happening is that people end up going out and buying that real cheap sleeping pad, and then they sleep on it for 2 or 3 trips, and they realize, hey, this is super uncomfortable, and 2 things happen. Either they fall in love with backpacking as a whole, right? And I'm using that as an example, and they realize I need to upgrade my sleeping pad. So they spend initially a $60 on a sleeping pad that, you know, is okay, will get you by, but as they got more into it, they said, well, I got to spend $120 now on a really good sleeping pad, or possibly even more if it's insulated. So now their total cost to get into it was $180, instead of, you know, 120 if they just would have stopped and bought the more expensive piece of gear. Now, a lot of people when they're getting into a new sport or hobby don't want to buy the most expensive thing, whether it be financial reasons, whether because they're not sure about getting into it. If it's financial reasons, my advice to you is literally to stop, save a little bit more money, and get at least a middle tier, middle of the road, a little bit higher end product that you're interested in getting into. So for me, I'll use me as an example. I'm really getting back into photography. In college, I studied photography. Right out of college, I was obsessed with photography. It kind of just went away, but I've really fallen back into it. And when I was looking at all the cameras that I wanted to get, and I did buy one, I was like, well, maybe I should just get like the lower end mirrorless camera and then get some good glass for it, and then essentially, you know, sacrifice some of the weatherproofing and sacrifice some of, you know, the in-body stabilization features and stuff like that. And then I stopped myself. And the reason why I stopped myself, I said, why would I do that? Why would I buy the lowest end mirrorless camera and then continue to use it and fall in love with it, and then 6 months later be like, boy, I really wish that I had this, try to sell the lower end camera, lose money on that purchase, and then have to put it towards, let's say the camera was $1,000, I sell it for $700, let's say, I've lost $300, and then end up buying a more expensive camera in the first place. I'd rather keep that $300 and put it towards something else. Now, let's just kind of throw another situation into the mix where maybe that person doesn't fall in love with what they're kind of trying to be passionate about or trying to get a new hobby about, right? If they buy the cheaper gear, they might not fully fall in love with it because they're missing a piece of the puzzle. Granted, you know, like if I would have bought that the lower end camera, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, like I love it, but like I wish I had these things, so I'm not that passionate about it. It's a silly way to think, but psychologically, this is how we all think. And I see a lot of posts about people, you know, what kayak should I buy? What's a good entry-level kayak? What's a good entry-level tent? What's a good entry-level sleeping pad? I'm going to tell anybody who's watching this, who runs across this video, to buy something that you can not afford. Meaning that once you think you can afford something, save another 2 months, get the better gear. Because at the end of the day, if you don't love it, selling better gear is much, much easier than selling cheaper gear. Case in point, my first kayak was a feel-free Lure 11.5. And at the time, pedal kayaks weren't all the rage. And that feel-free Lure had the seat, it had the removable sonar pod. It was kind of like, it was a big shit kayak at the time. Everybody had them. Well, when it came time to sell that kayak, I had no issue selling it. And honestly, I didn't lose that much money on it because it was still a really good kayak. You know, if I went out and bought, let's just say, I don't know, like a Tamarack or something at like a really low level, selling a Tamarack is something that like, which is a Walmart kayak, you can't really get any kind of money back for it. You're losing money regardless. I've also done that with sleeping pads as well. Like I've fallen victim to, you know, let's just get out there and kind of go kind of mentality. But like at the end of the day, if I buy less expensive gear and I get out there and I'm uncomfortable or I'm not having a good time because of my gear, I might not fall in love with it as much, specifically when it comes to hiking and backpacking, but I also too might be like, now I gotta go home and buy something different. I think that there was a little bit of backlash in the hiking and backpacking community earlier this year when all the ultralight backpackers were kind of getting shit on a little because they were coming off a little bit too arrogant. I saw some big channels actually apologize and say, that's not what this channel's about. But you know, sometimes when you're talking about gear all the time, and you're talking about weight and stuff like that, and you know how expensive things are, it comes off like that. And I actually think that's a good thing. I think people should strive to have the best gear for them. I'm not an ultralight backpacker. I could do a whole rant on why ultralight backpacking is stupid because it just is. It's kind of a, I don't know. I don't want to get into it here, but anyway. So my point in this whole post is that I get asked questions a lot, like what kayaks should I buy? And I tell people what the price are of the kayaks that I think that they should get into, or what reels or what rods. And granted, I'm a very small channel. But, you know, I remember when I was asking larger YouTubers in the photography game, what camera should I get? They were always kind of saying, same thing I'm saying to you right now. Do not get the bottom rung stuff. It will cost you more money in the long run. Get better gear initially. If you have to sell it because you don't fall in love with that passion or with that hobby, it's a heck of a lot easier to sell. And it also holds up a lot longer. I don't know. This ended up being kind of just a mindless rant, and I kind of all sparked by one of my partnerships sending me a crappy flashlight. And I'm thankful that they do those things, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to review that thing. It's 4 years on the market, and it's far, far, far less superior than their new model that they have out now. I hope everyone is having a great holiday season. I hope everyone is staying safe and sane. Talk to you soon.